Hello, folks. I'm Josh McGee, and welcome to another episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, good to be back for another week and to preview another major soccer tournament coming up here, starting off this week. We've already gotten into Euro 2024. If you didn't see my last video, go ahead and check it out. It still is pretty relevant as far as previewing that tournament. It's already been a great first round of group stage matches, plenty of interesting results, great individual performances. So I would encourage you all to go back and look at that one. But very excited to jump into a new video here this week. As you can see behind me here in the home studio, I got Argentina and I got USA up because it is time to preview Copa America. Also wearing my city kit because at the end of the video, I am going to talk a little bit about St. Louis City SC and just the state of the club right now, as far as how things are going with them are concerned. But very excited for Copa America to join in with Euro 2024, a double barrel of soccer action, if you will. Very excited, of course, CONCACAF and CONMEBOL, South America, and of course, North and Central America going at it here in this tournament. Obviously, the USA, big part of this, but I'm going to break down each team. I'm going to go more in depth as far as like the bigger names are concerned, the favorites of this tournament, and then kind of casually, quickly get through some of these other teams. But of course, obviously, there's a lot to get to as far as these big names are concerned and what they want to get out of this tournament. So let's start things off here in Group A with the obvious favorites, and that would be Argentina, the reigning World Cup winners, jumping in here to Copa America, and their roster is as stacked as when they won the World Cup. You got to start off in goal with Emiliano Martinez. Had a great season once again for Aston Villa, helping get them to the Champions League. You look at things in defense, you got someone like Christian Romero from Tottenham. You got Lisandro Martinez back in full fitness at the end of the season for Manchester United. He's expected to play a role here for Argentina. You got someone on the outside like Nicolas Tagliafico, who is a great outside back. He will provide them some width and some interesting, offensive tactics on the outside. Then you jump into the midfield. It's a great collection for Argentina, and not just is about the attacking threats, but it's about, creation. It's about breaking up play, box-to-box midfielders and the like. It's a good, diverse collection of midfielders for this team. You think about someone like Alexis McAllister, who joined up with Liverpool and had a great season there after he joined them from Brighton. Think about someone like Ezequiel Palacios, who had a great season for Bayer Leverkusen. Still a lot of Bayer Leverkusen players to talk about. Think about that great unbeaten season they just had in the Bundesliga. A lot of their players will be featuring at the Euros and here in Copa America. Enzo Fernandez, a little bit of a tumultuous season at Chelsea, but still has some quality to add to this team. And then up top, right? Lautaro Martinez, 24 goals this past season for Inter Milan. Julian Alvarez, a great season at Manchester City, continuing his development. But as we know, it's all about that main man, Lionel Messi, still killing it, doing great things for Inter Miami, has got them at the top of the table in MLS. He's now going to jump back in and help things out here with Argentina. As we know, the world centers around him, right? You've got all of this great attacking talent, got a lot of old heads like Angel Di Maria still there as well, but Messi is still the main man as far as things are concerned. And it'll be interesting to see how he can bring everybody else into the fold once again and recreate that magic that we saw at the World Cup. As far as another player to watch for Argentina, I'm going to go with Alejandro Garnacho, 19-year-old from Manchester United, 7 goals and 4 assists this past season for the Red Devils in the EPL. Just another young gun that they can bring off the bench most likely, but can provide that speed, that pace that really confounds defenses and can even free up more space for the likes of Messi, Martinez, and some of these other guys for Argentina. Much like Alvarez for Manchester City, Garnacho could use a big tournament to kind of pole vault his case for being a consistent presence in that Manchester United side. Alvarez is in the same boat as far as wanting to consistently break through for Man City. He didn't see a lot of game time at the end of the season for the Premier League champions. Garnacho is kind of in the same boat. He wants to submit his starting status, not just for Manchester United, but really push to be one of those faces going forward for Argentina after Messi is done. Obviously, a very loaded team. They're the reigning World Cup champions. They got to be expected to be the favorites here at Copa America. Now, while Argentina are going to be the favorites here in Group A, they've got an interesting collection of teams that are joining them here. Let's start off with a familiar opponent for them, and that would be Chile. Chile, as far as their roster is concerned, Claudio Bravo still holding it down in net, playing for Real Betis in La Liga this past season. As far as some other players on this team, you got someone like Guillermo Maripan, who plays for AS Monaco in League One. Diego Valdez, 11 goals for Club America so far this past season. And then, of course, someone who many people are familiar with, the former Manchester United player now plying his trade over there in Serie A, and that would be Alexis Sanchez coming into this tournament at 35 years old, so most likely it could be his last Copa America. As far as a player to watch for Chile, I'm going to go with Ben Brereton Diaz. 6 goals in 14 starts this past EPL season for Sheffield United. He wasn't able to keep them up, but as far as the quality is concerned, he was far and away the best player, especially attacking-wise, for Sheffield United. Somebody up top who can be a target man, who's got experience, starting or coming off the bench and providing some goal-scoring threat. It's going to be a big part for Chile. They've been a great team as far as, past World Cups, past qualifications are concerned. Obviously, Alexis Sanchez has been their best player for a number of years, but he's getting old in the tube. Claudio Bravo also up there as well. They're going to need some of these other guys to step up. Second place in this group is definitely up for grabs, but it's a crowded field behind Argentina. Chile are going to have to find a way to separate themselves from the other teams in this group. The other team from South America in Group A would be Peru. Peru's got a pretty nice MLS field to it. They've got a great goalkeeper there in Pedro Galiz, who's been doing wonderful things over the years for Orlando City SC. Got someone like Luis Abram, who's a defender who plays for Atlanta United. Wilder Cartagena, from a midfielder from Orlando as well. So you kind of got that familiarity between him and Galiz. Again, somebody in the midfield who can play box to box, can provide attacking threat as well. And then you've got some quality from across seas, right? You've got Andre Carrillo, who plays in the Saudi League right now, did have one season in the EPL at Watford, one of their better attacking threats. Peru are going to have to find a way to get some goals in this tournament if they want to get out of this group. One guy they could potentially continue to lean on, as they've done for so long over the years, would be my player to watch for Peru, and that would be Paulo Guerrero. 40 years old. He's going to be the oldest player at Copa America, I do believe. He is Peru's all-time goal scorer. Last time, I believe it was this past World Cup or one of their last major tournaments, he was unable to participate due to injury. So now he's back for Peru, trying to contribute here at Copa America. 40 years old, man. I don't care who you are, what type of quality, still continuing to be able to make the national team itself at that age. You think about someone like Cristiano Ronaldo, honestly, for Portugal right now, and a few others at the Euros competing, it's a tremendous accomplishment. So I don't know if he's going to start. I don't know how much he'll play, but he's, again, very experienced. He's been their best all-time goal scorer. His presence alone is going to provide some type of help for this Peru team, just trying to find a way to get out of Group A. Then we have the lone CONCACAF representative to round out Group A, and that would be Canada. Canada made headlines a couple weeks ago when they hired Jesse Marsch, the American manager, to lead them. And then, of course, the 0-0 draw versus France in France's final tune-up before the Euros really rose a few eyebrows across nations, and obviously has put some expectations on Canada to potentially get themselves out of Group A. As far as the roster is concerned, obviously the headline is Alphonso Davies, currently at Bayern Munich, rumored to be potentially moving to Real Madrid. If he has a great Copa America, we could see that move sealed here over the course of the summer. You know about him, you know about the pace, you know about him and that left foot on the left side. Canada are going to lean on him heavily here to get themselves out of this group. And then, of course, some other players. Obviously, being from St. Louis, really looking forward to seeing if Kyle Hebert can get an opportunity here. Applying his trade for St. Louis City SC really would be an awesome opportunity to play alongside some really good talent on this Canadian national team. You think about someone like a Jonathan Osorio, who's been there for a long time. You got someone like Tejan Buchanan, Junior Hoylett, Kyle Larin, a lot of guys who've been doing some great things elsewhere outside of the Canadian national team, but have really helped prop them up to being one of the better teams in CONCACAF. Another guy who's been doing it, and he's been doing it at a very, very successful rate, is my player to watch for Canada, and that would be Jonathan David. 19 goals this past season in League One for Leo. He's been part of some really great seasons for Leo, competing at the very top of League One, getting the best of even PSG at times over the course of these last few years. Great goal scorer, great midfielder, being able to contribute on set pieces and deliveries and that such. You're going to have to find different ways in this group and in this tournament to score. It can't always just really be relied upon with one guy. Got Davies, of course, for his speed, but as far as finishing ability and creativity, Jonathan David, honestly, is probably the leader in that regard for Canada. They've got an opportunity here. This group, Argentina, big headline, big favorite, fully expect them to win this group. But as far as second place is concerned, you can make a case for Chile. You can make a case for Canada. Peru, you just never know as far as what they can get with the talent that they're bringing from MLS and a few other different places. But Canada, I think they have a really strong chance here, and they would be my pick personally. Maybe a little bit of an upset, maybe not. But I think Jesse Marsch has got the formula here, and he's got the talent to do it, to find a way to at least get second place here in Group A. Next up, we have Group B. And honestly, Group B might be my favorite group at Copa America for one main reason. I think it's the least predictable. All four of these teams could honestly find a way to get either first or second in this group. Let's start off with a team from South America, and that would be Ecuador. Ecuador, as far as some players to look out for here on this roster, you got someone like William Pacho, who's made 33 starts in defense for Eintracht Frankfurt at just 22 years old this past season in the Bundesliga. The star man for this Ecuador team has got to be Moises Caicedo. Kind of a bit of an up and down season at Chelsea, making the big money move from Brighton, but really turned it on at the end of the year. He had that great goal from half field against Bournemouth to close out the season. He can provide goals, but his main duty, of course, is to break up play in the middle of the pitch for Ecuador. Somebody else, as far as maybe can provide a little bit of an offensive threat, you got someone like Jeremy Sarmiento, 20 appearances for Ipswich Town this past season in the championship, helping them get promoted to the English Premier League for next season. And then you got an old head, 34 years old, Iner Valencia, former West Ham United player who's been leading the line a lot over the years for Ecuador. He is still going to be depended upon to provide some goal scoring threat for this team. As far as specifically my player to watch for Ecuador, I'm going a little bit off the board here. I'm going with another young player at 22 years old, and that would be Piero Hincapié. Plays in defense. He's made 63 starts in the Bundesliga over the last 3 seasons for Bayer Leverkusen. Again, going back to Leverkusen, the season they just had, the high-stakes matches that they've had against the Bundesliga giants in Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund. You go into Europa and those matches that they had as well. This is a player in Hincapié who has played a lot of big-time matches over the course of specifically this season, but over the last 3 seasons and all the starts that he's been able to make. Ecuador, as far as in this group, if they can provide a solid defensive presence, they have a great chance not just to advance from this group, but potentially win it here in Group B. Up next, the other team from South America in this group, that would be Venezuela. As far as players on this roster, you got someone like John Arambaru, a defender from Real Sociedad who had a solid season in La Liga. Again, some MLS players who could provide some impact for Venezuela. You got someone like Jose Andres Martinez from Philadelphia Union. You got Daniel Pereira, great attacking midfielder from Austin FC, both having pretty solid seasons so far in MLS, or at least have been playing a lot for their teams respectively in MLS. And then someone familiar to Premier League fans from his time with West Brom, who were up in the Premier League a few years ago. That would be Solomon Rodon, playing for Pachuca right now in Liga MX. He's got 8 goals during his time there. A guy who has a big presence up top, who can hold up play for this Venezuela team. As far as specifically a player to watch for on this Venezuela team, I'm going with Yangel Herrera. 5 goals this past season, 27 starts, and 29 La Liga games for third place Girona. They were kind of the Cinderella stories of La Liga this past season, given the likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid fits over this past season. You know, again, another attacking player who's got proven results from one of the bigger leagues in all of Europe. Herrera is going to be depended upon here to cause some chaos for a Venezuela team that probably has maybe the worst odds in this group of getting out of it. But if everything can come together and they can get consistent production, I think from the midfield especially, this is a team that potentially could find a way to at least get second place here in Group B. Moving right along, Group B is the only group to feature 2 teams from CONCACAF, the first one being Jamaica, the Reggae Boys. I love this roster. Andre Blake, been one of the best, if not the best goalie in MLS over the years for Philadelphia Union. He continues to man the post for this Jamaica team. As far as other players, Ethan Pinnock had a great season this past year for Brentford in the English Premier League. Bobby DeCorvia-Reid, a guy who maybe is not seeing the most time at Fulham, but still is used off the bench and has been playing against some top competition there in the Premier League. Kevin Lambert, a guy in the USL Championship, got to give a shout out to them, doing great things for San Antonio FC. And then, of course, a couple of big names, right? Demarai Gray, playing in the Saudi League, former Leicester City player. And then, of course, Michael Antonio, playing for West Ham United, has been leading their line over the course of the last few seasons, been putting up some great numbers as far as goal scoring is concerned. Another offensive player who I think is going to be their main catalyst at this tournament is my player to watch out for, and that would be Leon Bailey. 10 goals, 9 assists this past season in the English Premier League for Aston Villa, much like kind of like a Bayer Leverkusen or a Girona, a team that maybe not many people expected to be up near the top of the table, especially in the Premier League. But Villa getting 4th this past season, Bailey had a lot to do with it. He really finished the season strong. Most of his production came at the tail end of the season, really helping with Villa's push. Has a lot of pace, a lot of speed, a lot of creativity, and a guy on the outside who can either get the ball to the likes of Antonio or he can create magic for himself, Jamaica, I think, as far as just going through each of those levels, defense, maybe a little bit of a concern, but you got Blake back there who can really kind of make up for a lot of mistakes from this defense. And you got the speed and the creativity of these offensive players up front. Would be really cool to see. I think Jamaica have a great chance to find a way to get out of this group. And of course, lastly, just talked about our neighbors to the north in Group A. Now talking about our neighbors to the south in Mexico in Group B. Mexico are in a bit of a transition. This is going to be a really interesting Copa America. You have no Guillermo Ochoa in net. You have no Chucky Lozano in the midfield, and have no Raul Jimenez up top. A lot of young players, a lot of players who haven't gotten as much time yet for the Mexican national team are going to feature at this tournament. They got someone in defense like Jorge Sanchez playing defense right now at FC Porto, formerly of Ajax, though. Big name player that I would expect to be one of their leaders at this tournament. You got Edson Alvarez, who right now is at West Ham in the Premier League. As far as goal scoring threats, Guillermo Martinez, 27 goals in Liga MX the past 3 years. So that could be someone who could step up in the place of Jimenez. Another guy to watch out for, my player to watch out for Mexico as far as goal scoring threats are concerned, would be Marcelo Flores, a former under-21 player for Arsenal, 6 goals for Tigres this season in Liga MX. A guy, again, who has got some great pace, can play outside, can play up through the middle, someone who is going to be leaned upon here to come up with those goals. Mexico would normally be a pretty solid choice to get out of this group, maybe even top it, given the circumstances. But because of this transition of the roster, you don't have those big names as much anymore. You don't have someone like Hector Herrera or some of these other players over the years for Mexico that we've seen so much in different competitions. It's a new look Mexico. And as far as expectations are concerned, they should still be expected to be near the top of this group. But as far as the competition is concerned, like I said, you could really make the case for all 4 of these teams to find one of the spots. As far as the favorites to win the group, Mexico and Ecuador are probably your top 2, but I do really feel like Jamaica has a strong chance to knock one of those teams off. A lot of intrigue and suspense. This is why I really like Group B. Up next, we have Group C, and I'm going to save the team that you probably all want to hear about, talk about, whatever, to the very end of it. So we're going to start with the other headline team in this group, and that would be Uruguay. Uruguay, a lot of big names on this roster once again. You got a center back pairing that I think might be one of the best in the entire tournament in Jose Jimenez from Atletico Madrid and Raul Araujo from Barcelona. Both had great seasons in La Liga. In the midfield, I think Uruguay are pretty loaded, especially on the technical side of things. You got someone like Manuel Ugarte from PSG, Rodrigo Bentancur from Tottenham, and of course, Federico Valverde from Real Madrid was a heavy presence in their Champions League winning season and La Liga winning season as well over this past year. Familiar name, of course, still there in Luis Suarez. Is going to be a big part of helping with the goals for Uruguay at this tournament. No Edson Cavani. He just retired from international duty, but they still have someone like Brian Rodriguez, formerly of LAFC, now has been plying his trade for Club America and Liga MX. But as far as that Cavani replacement, it always feels like there's 2 strikers rolling for Uruguay, and it's no different right now. My player to watch for them is Darwin Nunez. 11 goals and 8 assists this past season in the English Premier League for Liverpool. Had a little bit of a rocky first season. Still had some hills to overcome here this year, but solid production and return in league play. 5 goals and 3 assists for Uruguay in CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying right now. Big target, obviously very good in the air, and someone who can combine with Suarez up top. Each one of them kind of taking away from the defense. You have to keep track of both of them. They both offer a little bit of something different up top for Uruguay. They should probably still be considered the favorites in this group. And as far as things are concerned, they've got talent at every level, like the defensive pair at the back, really like the midfield. I think it's their strength. And you got a couple guys in Suarez and Nunez who are great goal scoring threats. A lot to like about Uruguay. They always find a way to get out of their group and make a pretty decent run at whatever major tournament they participate in. Up next, the other South American team in this group, that would be Bolivia. Got a few names here from this roster. I have their goalkeeper, Guillermo Vizcarra, down only really because he is the starting goalkeeper for the Strongest. That is a club name in Bolivia. They got a couple of really interesting and cool club names there for the Bolivian League. The Strongest would be such a cool club to represent. As far as some other players, you got a twin pair of defenders in Jose and Jesus Sagredo. Ramiro Vaca is a goal-scoring threat from the midfield. As far as my player to watch for Bolivia is concerned, that would be Jalma Cuellar, 22 years old, first Bolivia player ever to play for any Barcelona team. He plays for Barcelona's B team, had a goal and 3 assists this past season. He actually debuted for Bolivia. He made his international debut at the last Copa America in 2021. He was sent off in that match. So looking for a better tournament here. Now, of course, maybe doesn't have the pedigree and the numbers from some of the other Bolivia players who are playing domestically or playing in other different leagues, but someone with the quality to make it into Barcelona's youth system, I think, is someone that you have to watch out for. So we shall see if QR can play a role up top in some way in creating some goal scoring magic for Bolivia here at Copa America. As far as the CONCACAF half of Group C, let's start with Panama. On this roster, as far as some players that will make headlines for this team, you got someone like Michael Murillo, a defender with 3 goals in 16 League One matches for Marseille this past season. Anibal Godoy, 11 starts in 14 games so far this season in MLS for Nashville SC. And then Alberto Carrasquilla, 16 starts for Houston Dynamo here so far in MLS this season. As far as the player to watch out for Panama, I'm going with Jose Luis Rodriguez. 2 goals and 1 assist so far in CONCACAF qualifying, plays in the Portuguese league. As far as trying to make it out of this group, when you've got the likes of Uruguay and the team that I'm going to talk about next, Panama are going to be up against it. They're going to have to get some individual moments of brilliance. Someone like Luis Rodriguez is going to be a guy to be leaned upon here if Panama have any chance of making it out of Group C. But of course, rounding out Group C, it's the headliner, it's the host, it is the United States of America. I could get into every name on this roster. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to talk a lot about these players, starting off with the much maligned goalkeeper, Matt Turner. Didn't get the playing time that was hoped of him at Nottingham Forest. And of course, we've seen him make a few mistakes over these last few friendlies with Colombia and Brazil, but he's still the guy in net for the U.S. As far as the defense is concerned, a couple of guys from Fulham. You got Tim Ream, you got Anthony Robinson. Robinson had a really solid season, I thought, for Fulham, especially in the assist department. Chris Richards, breakthrough year at Crystal Palace, played a really big role for them, especially down the stretch and the success they had in closing out that season. Joe Scally, 25 starts in 31 games for Borussia Mönchengladbach, who had a solid season in the German Bundesliga. We saw what he could possibly grow into with his performance versus Brazil a few days ago. In the midfield, Weston McKennie, of course, Yunus Musa, 13 starts in 30 matches for AC Milan in Serie A. Gio Reyna, another player that didn't get the playing time that was hoped for of him, also ironically enough there at Nottingham Forest. Malik Tillman, 9 goals, 10 assists for PSV Eindhoven, and again in the Netherlands this past year. The big names, of course, though, up top, the guys who I really think are going to have to put on for the U.S. at Copa America. Christian Pulisic, what a great season. He had 12 goals, 8 assists for AC Milan. Disappointed as a Chelsea fan that he couldn't stick around there, but so happy to see him continue to develop and have the success that he has had so far for AC Milan. Tim Weah, 12 starts in 30 matches for Juventus. And then you've got someone like Valerian Balogun, 7 goals, 5 assists for Monaco this past season. But obviously, the big storyline here is for the U.S. and what they can do at Copa America and what that could mean for Greg Berhalter. You see it a lot, especially after the 5-1 result. It was quite clear. Berhalter out was the number one trend really in America. But then they turn around and they have a solid 1-1 draw versus Brazil. Only the second time in our history that we were able to not lose to Brazil. Yes, it was a friendly, and it's a friendly right before a major tournament. So obviously both teams, they don't want to have any injuries. They just want to get through it. But still, it was a result, and it was a much needed bounce back after that terrible performance versus Colombia. What are the expectations for this tournament for the U.S.? As far as this group is concerned, Uruguay is obviously their biggest obstacle as far as winning this group. Is it possible that they can do it? Yes, that match in Kansas City is going to be a big time result if they can get it as far as their opportunity to get out of this group is concerned. With Greg Berhalter, what does he need to do in order to avoid getting the axe here? I think if the USA do not make it out of this group, Berhalter will be sacked, I think, from the jump. It's just been too much of the inactivity and the development that has been lacking over the course of his tenure. You can't really say right now that the U.S. is so much better off than when before he took over to this point right now. There's not been that huge development as far as the quality is concerned across the board. U.S., though, I still think will find a way to get out of this group. But then you run into this situation where, unfortunately, when we get into Group D, it doesn't really matter if they finish second or if they finish first. They're going to have a really problematic matchup as far as the team coming out of Group D that they would have to face, whether they win Group C or whether they don't. That result will go a long way, I think, but getting out of the group will help Berhalter out a lot. And I think having a solid, close performance, even if it ends in a loss versus our potential opponent, would see him keep his job. But obviously right now, there's a lot of heat and angst surrounding the US men's national team as far as what they've been able to produce. Here's a big tournament. It's the warm-up before the 2026 World Cup, when they really have got to be at the top of their game. You've got to eliminate all sense of doubt going into that tournament. You only have a few short opportunities. This is the biggest one, honestly, outside of World Cup qualifying, that you can use to get yourself ready for 2026. Berhalter's going to have to knock it out of the park. He's got a good roster here with plenty of informed players, some guys who are vying for some of those spots. I'm excited to see what the U.S. team can do. As far as a player that I think can provide a major boost to USA, not only getting out of the group, but maybe causing an upset and moving on further here in Copa America, is the returning Tyler Adams. Now, obviously, there's not a lot of results to back my claim here, right? Adams was limited to just 3 matches this past season for AFC Bournemouth, continuing to deal with injury. That has really been the story over the course of his career. But it has been noticeable when he's in the lineup for the U.S. men's national team, they play a lot better. His role is integral. He breaks up play in the midfield. He connects the defense to the midfield and the midfield to the attack. He's a great passer of the ball. He's got such great strength. He is a versatile player that does so much of the dirty work that either the U.S. players don't do or they just don't have the talent to do so, not on his level. So Tyler Adams being back in the fold, I know he barely played versus Brazil. I don't even know if he's going to start. But as far as the results are concerned, when the U.S. can get up by a goal or they're in certain matches, bringing him in off the bench is still going to be even 10 times better than the other situation of not being able to have him. So having Tyler Adams back in the fold, combining with, you can pick any combination, right? You got most likely Musa and McKinney in there as well. Combining with those guys or anybody else in the midfield is going to provide a huge boost for the new men's national team. So hopefully Adams can start to rediscover some form here and play a large role at Copa America. And hopefully that will provide the necessary boost for the U.S. men's national team, not only to maybe get out of this group, but potentially win it and give themselves a solid chance going forward. And lastly, we have Group D, which features a pair of heavyweights from South America. Let's start off with Brazil. Brazil, loaded roster as always. You got Alisson in net, starting goalkeeper for Liverpool in the Premier League. You got a pair of great center backs, big center backs, in Gabriel Magalhaes and Eder Michel from Arsenal and Real Madrid, respectively. Pair of informed midfielders from the Premier League. You got Douglas Luiz, 9 goals for Aston Villa this past season, and Bruno Guimaraes, 7 goals and 8 assists for Newcastle this past year. But of course, the big stars are up top, as they usually are for Brazil. They are both playing at Real Madrid, and they are some of the best young players in the world. Of course, I'm talking about Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo. 41 goals and 17 assists combined across all competitions for Real Madrid this past year. They were integral, honestly, the leaders of their Champions League winning campaign. Again, great performances in the final versus Borussia Dortmund. They were able to win La Liga in Spain as well. Just dynamic offensive players out on the wings, terrorize outside backs. They have great finishing ability as well. They're so consistent, even for young players, at finishing off goals. But someone who's going to get a little bit lost in the shuffle is my player to watch. Everyone's going to be paying attention to Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo, but you cannot forget about Rafinha. Rafinha, 10 goals and 12 assists across all competitions for Barcelona this past season. He was a big part of their Champions League run, almost helped them get to some of those advanced stages. This is a guy who's got great goal scoring pop, can create as well, has a great ball as far as from the outside, providing crosses into the box. He's a great playmaker. And with everyone focused on trying to shut down Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo, this is a guy who can benefit from some added space. And if he gets added space, you're going to want to look out. Brazil, maybe just a little bit behind Argentina, but not by much. Got to be considered one of the favorites here in Copa America. However, Brazil are going to have some sturdy opposition early on in this tournament in the form of Colombia. Colombia as well have a pretty loaded roster at their disposal here for this tournament. You got the goalkeeper in Camilo Vargas taking over for David Ospina. In defense, you got someone like John Lucumi, 23 starts in 29 matches for Bologna this past season in Serie A. Yerry Mina, another experienced center back who's had a great career, formerly of Everton. Davison Sanchez, also formerly from the Premier League and Tottenham. James Rodriguez, he's not the star that he once was at the World Cup for Colombia, but is still an integral part of this midfield for this team. Luis Sinisterra from Bournemouth, another great attacking player, and Luis Diaz as well, a pacey winger from Liverpool, is going to provide some great offensive threat for this team. Player to watch out for Colombia is the guy that Chelsea is really after, and several other clubs across Europe are interested in as well. And what would be Jean Duran? Duran, 20 years old, 5 goals in 23 games for Aston Villa in the Premier League this past season. Just right now on the cusp of figuring out what he's going to be. His development is still at an early stage, but he's already a really great player, great finishing ability, just has some great creative pace to him as well. And is another one of those guys that you could see at this tournament really making a leap and becoming one of those fresh faces for one of these teams, this time being Colombia at Copa America. Colombia, we saw it in that friendly versus the US. They've got firepower. They play with amazing pace. They can really get in your face. And this is a team, they're going to jockey with Brazil. I don't know if they will come out on top, but that matchup in Group D is going to be absolutely astounding. And it's going to be a pivotal part as far as seeing which one of these two teams is going to challenge Argentina as one of the favorites at this tournament. Now, there are two other teams in Group D, but they face almost unsurmountable odds to get out of it. But let's start off with Paraguay. Paraguay, as far as this roster is concerned, they got a solid goalkeeper there in Carlos Coronel, who's made 15 starts so far this season for New York Red Bulls. Omar Alderete, 24 starts in 31 games this past season for Getafe. Then you got someone like Fabian Balbuena from Dynamo Moscow, who's a great attacking player. And then someone who people have become quite familiar with because he plays with Lionel Messi in MLS, and that would be Matias Rojas, 3 goals in 8 appearances so far for Inter Miami. But as far as a player to watch out for Paraguay, I think he is still the headliner for this team, and that would be Miguel Almiron, formerly of Atlanta United, helped into that title those few years ago, and then made the transition overseas to the EPL for Newcastle United. Didn't have as good of a season as he did in his first year for the Magpies, only 3 goals in 33 appearances. Still got a lot of playing time, still one of the better attacking players for Paraguay going right now. So he's going to be leaned upon here to give them something. He's going up against, again, really, really stacked odds against this team. Going to be going up against a teammate there and Bruno Guimaraes in Brazil, but he's got some quality still to him. He's got a few other teammates who can help him out here. Maybe Paraguay can find a way. They obviously play Brazil and Colombia enough. I'm not sure, though, if that will be enough to get them out of this group. And then lastly, the only CONCACAF team here in Group D that's got to be asking themselves, how did they get a draw such as this? That would be Costa Rica. As far as the players on this roster who are going to try to help them get out of this group, you got someone like Julio Cascante, 13 starts for Austin FC here in MLS this season so far as defender. Brandon Aguilera, loaned to Bristol Rovers from Nottingham Forest this past season, had a solid year there. Then someone like Ariel Lassiter, 3 goals and 4 assists so far this season in MLS for CF Montreal. As far as a player to watch for them is concerned, I went with Manfred Ugalde, 22 years old, 7 goals, has added 6 assists for FC Twente before transferring to Spartak Moscow this past season. Again, a guy that really is kind of helping with the transition. There's no Brian Ruiz, there's no other, Campbell or a few of these other players for Costa Rica anymore. They're looking for that next transition of talent. Ugalde there at 22 years old could be a big part of it. But honestly, again, Costa Rica, as far as the makeup is concerned, much like Mexico and maybe a few other teams at this tournament, there's a transition going on. And when you're in a group already with Brazil and Colombia, that is asking a lot of a new group to try to find a way to get themselves out of this group. But they got themselves a puncher's chance, if anything, and being the only CONCACAF team in this group, I'll be interested to see how they can do here in Group D. So those are all the teams competing at Copa America. Real quickly, just to wrap it up, as far as looking to the big picture there in the final, honestly, any combination of Argentina, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Brazil, Colombia, somehow, some way would be really cool. I think those are your 3 teams to really look out for in this tournament. Obviously, with CONCACAF is concerned, the US, Mexico, and Canada, I think would be your big 3 as far as just expectations are concerned. Everybody's going to want to get out of the group, but once you get to that point and you're playing some of these big teams from South America, realistically, as far as the matchup is concerned, I don't know if it's there for these CONCACAF teams. It's going to be cool being the host. There are going to be some great crowds on hand. Mexico, especially, I think, if they're playing somewhere closer to South, are going to have a great advantage as far as fans are concerned, but I don't know if that's going to be enough. The quality just isn't there. Argentina and Brazil's rosters especially are just stacked from bottom to top, and there's not much anybody else can really do about what they'll be facing here at Copa America. But still, I'm really excited to see the different clashes, the teams who are making those transitions from old heads to the younger generation, and of course, how CONCACAF does going up against the South American teams here when it gets down to it, when the pressure's uptight at a big tournament, because this is what they're going to have to deal with going into that 2026 World Cup, when historically South American teams have been the ones to dominate outside of Europe. You know, Brazil won, of course, last time when the World Cup was in mostly the U.S. Again, you know about Argentina's success in Mexico. These are some of the teams that you're going to be looking out for here in 2026. So Copa America, nice little tune-up for especially the U.S., which is a lot of us what we're focusing on, but for some of these other teams, it's a nice little teaser for what's to come here in a few years. So those are my thoughts on Copa America. But as I teased at the beginning of the show, I want to conclude this episode by talking about these guys, St. Louis City SC. Like I mentioned on the Euro 2024 preview show, there's so many great places right now to go to as far as St. Louis City SC coverage, especially at the local level. All the podcasts are concerned. Everybody's doing a great job. But I do want to give my 2 cents for what it matters right now as far as this club is concerned. St. Louis City SC right now, outside of a playoff spot. Full disclosure, this segment being filmed prior to the team's match versus the Colorado Rapids yesterday. Obviously, a win against a team that is currently in a playoff standing would be huge for this club right now, especially after the weekend that they had prior. It seemed like everything collapsed down on this team in Dallas with the injuries, with how the match played out, some of the same frustrations that we've seen over the course of months now, with new wrinkles of those bad injuries to Pompeo and to Nielsen. It's just unfortunately compounding what has been a frustrating season, I think, is kind of the sense of what I feel, and I think what most people feel about this team as far as their second season in MLS. When you really look at things from a macro perspective, they're still doing a pretty solid job, right? In year one of an expansion club, you're supposed to struggle. In year two, maybe you're competing for a playoff spot. Year three, you're hoping for basically holding down a playoff spot rather comfortably. And by year four, you're hoping to be challenging for the top of the table. St. Louis City basically had year four in year one. So when that happens, the expectations tend to shift. And while we're actually having the year two that we're supposed to be having, it feels different when you're comparing to the year four and year one that we did have, if that kind of makes sense. There's still a lot to be proud of as far as just new players that have been added, players who've continued to shine, players who have developed and have stepped up here in year two. But unfortunately, the results have not been there to really focus in on what has been going on. So I'm going to try to get through the entirety of this roster concern and then maybe some big time thoughts as far as the frustrations are concerned here for St. Louis City SC. One of the major points I want to make, I'm just going to jump right into it immediately here, actually concerns the transfer. I don't want to call it a saga, but just the rumors and the hype surrounding the desire to bring in Borussia Dortmund legend Marco Reus. It doesn't look like Reus is coming to St. Louis. It actually looks like he might be going to the Galaxy. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but that seems to be where the rumors are going. Obviously, from a fan perspective, Marco Reus was a great player for Borussia Dortmund, a loyal player for Borussia Dortmund, but it's been a long time since he has actually really produced. He's in his mid-30s. He's often injured. That's really not the profile that this specific City team would want, and generally really any team would want, unfortunately. But Reus is a star, and usually what comes with stars is star production. What really truly makes stars is not these, spectacular plays. That, of course, is a part of it, but what really makes stars is the consistency in their production. You can usually bet on your stars to produce. And that really is right now what St. Louis City are lacking. They are lacking consistent production from the guys that they have depended upon from coming out of year one. João Klaus has not been on form this season. He has struggled in front of net. It just seems like too many times he makes an unnecessary touch. He doesn't able to line up his shot, and he just has not been the threat in front of goal that we saw last year. Part of that is being, of course, that not many teams are giving the chances to St. Louis City they did in year one. We sniped a lot of goals off of mistakes from the back lines of other teams. That's not happening as much this year. Teams have been able to have time to adjust to this system. So Klaus has had to create a little bit more, and he's had to depend upon the service of others. All of that has not been there this year. I think also a part of the problem with Klaus and his production is there's nobody behind him pushing him. That would, of course, have fallen on the shoulders of Sam Adeniran, but he has been a disappointment this year. He was in the doghouse early on with head coach Bradley Carnell. And while he may be out of it and he may be playing and being a part of this team, he has not produced as well. Again, someone who gets himself in good spaces, but when it comes time to put the shot on goal, it rarely gets there and it rarely results in a goal. So those two have been struggling. When you look at the midfield, there have been some solid, production players here. Chris Durkin, that trade has really worked out. He has been a great player for St. Louis City SC. You think about someone like Indy Vasilev continuing to provide a lot of different things for City in the midfield. But unfortunately, other players have been doing well. Think about someone like Rasmus Alm, or now, unfortunately, think about Celio Pompeo and the development and the boost he has provided this year, being one of the top attacking players out in the wing in MLS as far as his dribbles into the opposition box is concerned. Well, that is, of course, no longer an option because he is now out for the year due to his injury. Alm has been out hurt. Thomas Ostrak, not available. He's out for the season as well due to injury. So that has been a big problem for St. Louis City SC. And then, of course, you can't even begin to talk about Edward Leuven. Unfortunately, he, as far as the disappointments are concerned, gets a pass because I cannot only imagine what he has had to deal with this year with being hurt. And then, of course, unfortunately, with his wife having to deal with cancer, it's just has all come down, crashing down upon him. And for him just to get back into the team and to try to give something to this offense from a playmaking perspective, I honestly got to tip my cap to someone who's been able to break through the type of struggle that he is dealing with. So I'm not including him in any of this. It's just a tough situation overall. On the defensive side of things, Thomas Totland's been a great signing. He really has. He's stabilized the right back side. Unfortunately, the rest of the defense has not come with it. Tim Parker has had to be basically the shield for this defense, and asking that of him right now at this stage in the career is a lot. Nielsen again is hurt, and unfortunately, you kind of have to pile him in with some of these other DPs and big name players because he's just rarely there. And when he has been, he just hasn't looked like the player that we expected that we were getting. The left back spot continues to be just a black hole right now for this team. They've played multiple different players there, but because of players, being out of form, or unfortunately now with Nicholas Dyer being sold after he barely made an impact here for St. Louis City SC, we are back to playing right backs and center backs at the left back position. And all this, of course, is unfurling in front of Roman Berkey, who continues to be, honestly, in my opinion, the best goalkeeper in MLS. He has been as advertised and more, and he has had to deal with a lot of inconsistency in front of them on the defensive side with the dreaded thought process of there's not going to be much help up top. We've seen his frustrations. I couldn't have explained it any more so than him taking a pop shot from 50 yards during the Dallas match because there's no offense going on in front of him, and he's just trying everything to keep this team in a match. He's made spectacular save after spectacular save, but if you read and listen to his post-game comments, he is fed up right now with this team to the point of, I don't think it's gotten to that point yet, but a player of his caliber who's as good as he is and doing what he's doing right now, I don't know how much loyalty he truly has to this club if it gets to a certain point. So hopefully things will begin to change. But City right now, it was already a tough situation to deal with as far as the injuries, as far as the team form is concerned. Now you throw in the injuries, which really, unfortunately, expose the lack of depth this team has had. And I think that goes back to this past offseason, not adding the necessary guys that we could have had. It's not really just about the production in the starting 11 is concerned, but it's covering these types of injuries and not being exposed in this way to really you're dipping down to the bottom of the barrel is concerned for your production. Should have made more signings than we did, especially signings that could have played a pivotal role in the starting 11 from the jump instead of what we're having to do now, which is bring in these players during the summer window. They can't play until July, so this team is treading water for another, few weeks or so before these midfielders and a few other different players can step in. And I think that was a big miss, unfortunately, this past offseason by Luce Pfannenstiel and the staff are concerned. Now, there's still time to do this. There's still other, great developments. Someone like Kojima now, who was brought in, first-year player, has looked really good. And it's really exciting for his future that he's already providing such great play for St. Louis City SC. He gets an opportunity to step up. There's still time for these players to get out of their funk. Think about Klaus. You think about some of these others. They can get back close to what they were doing. This team can start to really put some points together. But right now, they've put themselves in a backs against the wall situation, and the cavalry is not coming here for another few weeks. And again, I think that just gets back to the fact that this is a team, again, I know that there's a lot of honor in bringing in players from different, parts of life who have played in different leagues. Some of these younger players, bringing them up from City 2, signing draft picks, doing all these other different things. That's all fine and good. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, you'd rather have points over projects. You would rather have the production matching the expectations coming out of season 1 here into season 2. I like that we have a lot of young guys that we continue to develop. That is the benchmark for any type of successful club, is to have young players, develop them, and get them into the 11. But that cannot be a large part of the team plan when the production from those experienced players is especially not coming. So City right now are in a tough spot, and now they have to tread water because of the injuries. But I'm hopeful still because of the benchmark, or I would say just the standard here at the bottom, the base has been fairly cemented coming off of this season. You've got a great foundation as far as things are concerned with Berkey and a few of these other players still in the team that they can get themselves out of it. But right now, unfortunately, I think City are bearing the brunt of some small, minor mistakes that unfortunately have compounded into larger ones with the unknown of players not being up to the same level that they were last year. They're dealing with those consequences right now. I don't agree with anybody thinking that Carnell is the problem. His system has been great. His ability to deal with this situation right now, I think, cannot be understated. Unfortunately, I just don't think he has much to work with. When you look at that bench, I forget which match it was, but I think it might have been the Miami match even as well, where we made a large amount of substitutions, especially in the second half. Guys like Adeniran, guys like Thoresen, who I don't know if he's actually contributed anything positive, unfortunately, so far during his tenure. Some of the other midfielders come off the bench, they didn't do anything. They were absolutely, as far as just negatives coming into the match. You can't have a bench like that, especially now when you've got a lot of stars out injured. So, tough situation. I'm hopeful and excited for these newcomers that they can provide a jump, and hopefully we can start to see a little bit of the St. Louis City SC that we come to know over season 1 and that we've seen flashes of here in season 2. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, again, don't forget to like, comment, especially, again, if you want to have a conversation, we'd love to hear from everybody on their thoughts on Copa America, the U.S. men's national team, and, of course, St. Louis City SC. Anybody out there looking for someone to join in on a podcast taping of some time, would love to lend my services and my points of views on pretty much anything having to do with soccer, especially here in St. Louis. I'm available right now, still looking for that next opportunity. I don't know really how many more of these videos I'm going to make. There's not going to be any one next week and for the foreseeable future, but we will see down the pipe if something can come up and if I can create some magic here once again in the home studio. But for those of you who continue to watch, thank you for supporting me during this time. Really looking forward to this summer of soccer truly kicking off here with Copa America, with Euro 2024, and of course some MLS sprinkled in on the side as well that is going on, especially here in St. Louis. Enjoy, folks. Enjoy this summer of soccer, and I can't wait to be speaking with you all again next time. Take care.